Charter Arms Undercover, John Lennon. Charter Arms released the Undercover in the mid-1960s as a lightweight 5-shot .38 special revolver. Chapman purchased his copy in Honolulu on October 27, 1980, and brought it to New York in December with a box of hollow point ammunition. Chapman had focused on Lennon for months, entwining resentment over his lifestyle, past statements, and lyrics with a personal identification with Holden Caulfield from The Catcher in the Rye. He returned to the city on December 6th and on the evening of December 8th obtained Lennon's autograph on a record jacket before waiting again by the entrance arch. Shortly before 11 p.m., Lennon and Yoko Ono returned from the studio. Chapman stepped forward from about 9 to 10 feet and fired 5 rounds. 4 struck Lennon and 1 missed, breaking a window. 2 bullets entered the back on the left side, one exiting through the chest and left lung, and the other lodging in the neck. 2 more struck the left shoulder, one of the exiting bullets lodged in the upper left arm. Lennon staggered into the lobby and collapsed. Police arrived quickly, transported him by car, and reached Roosevelt Hospital, where he had neither pulse nor respiration. Despite thoracotomy and massive transfusion, he was declared dead on arrival. Medical findings described catastrophic damage to the left lung, the left subclavian artery, and the aortic arch, with blood loss estimated at well over half of total volume, an unsurvivable pattern even with immediate operating room access. Chapman remained at the scene reading Salinger and surrendered without resistance. He later pled guilty and began a life term subject to repeated parole denials.
Webley British Bulldog, James A. Garfield. Webley Philip & Sons British Bulldog was a compact 5-shot, solid-frame pocket revolver introduced in 1872 and widely copied. Typical barrels ran about 2.5 inches with fixed notch and post sights and a double-action trigger for rapid repeat fire. Chamberings across the pattern included .442 Webley and .450 Adams. Many American copies were marked for .44 Bulldog or .44 S&W American. Guiteau was a disappointed office seeker who convinced himself that removing Garfield served divine and political ends. He stalked the president for weeks and framed the act as political necessity, even writing the vice president that the deed would benefit the nation. He practiced briefly with his new revolver and waited for a close indoor opportunity. The attack came on July 2, 1881, at the Baltimore and Potomac Station in Washington, as Garfield walked with Secretary James G. Blaine. 2 shots were fired. The first grazed Garfield's arm, the second entered his back and passed the first lumbar vertebra, lodging in the abdomen near the pancreas. Medical responses reflected 19th century standards, and infection set in. Garfield died on September 19th after more than 2 months of complications. The Bulldog's big-bore, short-barreled cartridges were intended for close ranges of roughly 15 to 20 yards. The sources here do not provide numerical velocity or energy, but the wound track through the spine into abdominal organs shows why such pocket revolvers remained dangerous in confined spaces. Guiteau's jury deliberated for an hour, and he was hanged in 1882.
Ivor Johnson's Safety Automatic, William McKinley. Ivor Johnson's top-break safety automatic was a 6-shot revolver patterned after contemporary Webley practice, with a star extractor that lifted all spent cases when the barrel tipped. Across 3 major iterations, early examples were optimized for black powder, and later versions for smokeless. Finishes ranged from blued to electro-nickel. Leon Czolgosz was an unemployed anarchist who absorbed European revolutionary rhetoric and focused his resentment on the president. He bought a cheap .32 Ivor Johnson in Buffalo with the intention of striking during the Pan American Exposition. In the heat, a custom of carrying handkerchiefs led guards to relax the rule that both hands be empty. On September 6, 1901, Czolgosz cued early at the Temple of Music reception. When his turn came, he extended both hands, his right wrapped in a white cloth that concealed the revolver's frame. 2 quick shots followed. One deflected off a coat button and fell into the president's clothes. The other traversed the stomach and bowel bowel, lacerated the pancreas and an adrenal gland, and lodged in his back muscles. Surgery repaired the stomach but could not resolve the pancreatic trauma. McKinley initially rallied, then deteriorated on the 8th day, and died of gangrene and fulminant sepsis. Typical .32 S&W loads of the era pushed an 85-grain lead bullet around 700 feet per second, a mild performance profile that explains the first round's deflection by a button, yet does not preclude deep penetration in soft tissue at contact distance. The event propelled Theodore Roosevelt into the presidency and reshaped security practices around public receptions. FN Model 1910, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. John Browning's Model 1910 was a striker-fired blowback pistol with what was often called a triple safety, a grip safety, a magazine disconnect, and a manual lever. It was offered in .32 ACP with a 7-round magazine and in .38 ACP with 6. Members of Young Bosnia, aided by nationalist networks that included elements of the Black Hand, sought to end Habsburg rule in Bosnia and Herzegovina and saw Franz Ferdinand's visit as a catalyst. Weapons and bombs moved into position during May and June 1914, with local recruits staged along the motorcade route. An initial bomb thrown by Nedeljko Čebrinovec wounded bystanders, but not the Archduke. A wrong turn placed the open touring car near Schiller's Delicatessen, where Gavrilo Princip stood with an FN 1910. At point-blank distance, he stepped to the running board and fired 2 rounds. One struck Franz Ferdinand in the neck, lacerating the jugular. The other hit Sophie in the abdomen. She was dead on arrival at the governor's residence. The Archduke remained conscious briefly, then died within minutes. Princip was seized immediately after the shooting. In .38 ACP, the Model 1910 was a modest-powered pocket auto. The sources here identify the chambering but do not provide numerical terminal data. The outcome is explained by distance and placement. At contact ranges, a jugular hit produces rapid exsanguination, regardless of nominal pistol energy.
Beretta M1934, Mahatma Gandhi.
Beretta's M1934 was a simple, durable blowback pistol with an open-top slide and a 7-round 380 ACP magazine. Production spanned from the 1930s well into the post-war period. Natharam Godse, a Hindu nationalist previously linked to the RSS and a member of the Hindu Mahasabha, believed Gandhi's moral authority and political interventions endangered Hindu interests. A series of earlier knife attempts and a failed grenade plan on January 20, 1948, gave way to the final operation 10 days later, after Gandhi's fast had influenced the government to release funds to Pakistan. On January 30, at Birla House in New Delhi, Gandhi walked toward an evening prayer meeting. Godse stepped forward on the raised lawn, pushed through attendants, and fired multiple shots at very close range into the torso. Eyewitness notes from Manuben Gandhi place impacts several inches to the right of the navel at slightly different heights. Gandhi collapsed immediately and was carried back inside. No hospital transfer occurred. He was pronounced dead there, within minutes to roughly half an hour, depending on the account. The 9x17 Corto cartridge is less powerful than service 9x19 or 45 auto loads, with an approximate muzzle velocity of 950 feet per second quoted for standard ball. At arm's length into the abdomen and chest of an elderly slight victim, multiple hits produce rapid hemorrhage. Carcano Model 9138, John F. Kennedy. Italy's short rifle variant of the Carcano, the M9138, fed a 6-round internal magazine via an en bloc clip, and was often equipped for surplus sale in the United States with commercial optics. The tourney-made rifle linked to the assassination, serial C2766, carried a side-mounted 4x18 scope when Lee Harvey Oswald mail-ordered it under the alias A. Hidell. Retail records, a palm print on a portion of the barrel accessible only at disassembly, ammunition head stamps, and backyard photographs tied the gun to Oswald's possession. Oswald was an avowed Marxist who had defected to the Soviet Union and later advocated for Castro's cause after his return. He stored the rifle wrapped in a blanket at a friend's home. On November 22, 1963, he brought a long paper package to work at the Texas Book Depository, describing it as curtain rods. Around 12:30 p.m., 3 shots were fired from a 6th-floor window at the open limousine. 3 spent 6.5 by 52 cases were found near the position, and the rifle, containing 1 unfired round, was located minutes later among the boxes. The provided material states that the shots mortally wounded President Kennedy. Specific hospital chronology and detailed anatomical paths are not included in these sources.
Typical Western Cartridge Company ball ammunition for 6.5 by 52 millimeters used 160 to 161 grain full metal jacket at published velocities around 2170 to 2300 feet per second, with muzzle energies in the neighborhood of 1700 to 1900 foot-pounds. Oswald fled the scene, killed Officer J.D. Tippit with his revolver, and was arrested in the Texas Theater shortly thereafter.
Iver Johnson Cadet 55A, Robert F. Kennedy. Iver Johnson's Cadet series offered a small-frame revolver with an 8-shot cylinder in .22 long rifle, a capacity advantage over the 5- and 6-shot norm. Sirhan Bashara Sirhan, a Palestinian Christian, nurtured a fixation on Robert Kennedy tied to the senator's support for Israel. Diary entries recorded weeks of intent and framed the killing as an obsession. He possessed the pistol illegally and carried a newspaper clipping on Kennedy's positions. Shortly after midnight, as Kennedy left the embassy ballroom through the Ambassador Hotel's pantry, Sirhan rushed from near an ice machine and fired rapidly at point-blank distance. 8 rounds were discharged before bystanders wrestled him down. 5 others were wounded. Kennedy was struck behind the right ear at about an inch away, driving bullet and bone fragments into the brain. 2 more rounds entered behind the right armpit, one exiting the chest and another lodging in the back of the neck. Medical staff at the scene and police moved Kennedy to Central Receiving Hospital and then to Good Samaritan. Neurosurgery began at 3:12 a.m. and continued for hours, but the head wound was not survivable. He was pronounced dead at 1:44 a.m. on June 6th.
The .22 LR lacks the immediate tissue disruption of larger service rounds, yet at contact distance into cranial bone, it can fragment and ricochet within the skull with catastrophic effect. Remington Model 760 Game Master, Martin Luther King. Remington's Model 760, introduced in 1952, is a pump-action sporting rifle with a detachable box magazine, typically 4 rounds, and a 22-inch barrel. The rifle identified in Memphis police custody is a .30-06 760 tied to the shooting. James Earl Ray escaped prison in 1967 and began shadowing King by March 1968. Purchases under aliases in Alabama included ammunition and then the Remington 760. He drove to Memphis on April 3rd, registered at a rooming house near the Lorraine Motel, and rented a second room with a view of King's balcony, buying binoculars on the afternoon of the murder. At 6:01 p.m. on April 4, 1968, a single .30-06 round was fired from the bathroom window of the rented room as King stood on the second-story balcony. The bullet struck the right cheek, fractured the jaw, entered the neck and chest, severed major vessels, passed near the base of the neck, and lodged by the left shoulder blade. King was conscious briefly, then transported to Central Joseph Hospital, where resuscitative care failed, and he was pronounced dead at 7:05 p.m. Autopsy noted total transaction of lower cervical and upper thoracic spinal cord and massive hemorrhage. In big game hunting terms, the .30-06 is chosen for reliable penetration and terminal performance at distance. In this context, the wound produced immediate hemodynamic collapse. Ray pleaded guilty and later recanted. Alternative conspiracy claims surfaced over the decades.
Beretta 84F, Yitzhak Rabin. The Beretta 84F is a mid-size blowback pistol in .380 ACP with a double-stack magazine, part of the Cheetah series known for reliability and controllability in compact service roles. The weapon recovered after the 1995 assassination was a Beretta 84F, and 3 shots were fired, 2 of which struck the Prime Minister. Yigal Amir, a law student from Herzliya, opposed the Oslo process and spoke for months about killing Rabin under the religious legal concept of din rodef. He discussed the plan with his brother and a friend and made prior abortive attempts. Despite being on the security service's radar, he had observed lax protection at public functions and believed he could reach the Prime Minister. On November 4, 1995, after a large peace rally in Tel Aviv's Kings of Israel Square, Rabin walked toward his car. Amir approached from behind and fired 3 times. The first or second missed, grazing a bodyguard during the struggle. 2 struck Rabin in the torso. On arrival at Ichilov Hospital, Rabin had no pulse. A chest tube evacuated air from the right chest and briefly restored circulation before surgery began. He died at 11:02 p.m.
Autopsy reported one bullet entering the lower back, rupturing the spleen and puncturing the left lung, and another entering below the collarbone, shattering ribs and piercing the right lung. Death followed massive hemorrhage and respiratory collapse. A cerebral air embolism later showed a cerebral air embolism that complicated resuscitation. Amir confessed and received life imprisonment plus additional years for wounding the bodyguard. Philadelphia Derringer, Abraham Lincoln. Henry Derringer's pocket pistol was a compact cap-lock arm built for concealment with a black walnut stock, silver inlay, and an overall length under 6 inches. Booth chose a single shot rather than a revolver because the scenario required only one contact distance discharge and maximum concealability inside a crowded theater. Booth was a famous actor and a committed Southern partisan. His original concept involved kidnapping Abraham Lincoln to exchange for Confederate prisoners, but Lee's surrender on April 9, 1865, turned a hostage plot into a coordinated attempt to decapitate Union leadership. He assigned attacks on the Vice President and Secretary of State to accomplices, then reserved Lincoln for himself. The timing depended on stage cues Booth knew by heart. At about 10:15 p.m. on April 14, 1865, with the guard absent from the box, he slipped in and waited for a predictable laugh line from Our American Cousin before firing.
The round entered behind Lincoln's left ear, tracked forward through the brain, shattered orbital structures, and came to rest flattened against the frontal bone. Lincoln collapsed immediately and never regained consciousness. He died the following morning despite continuous care. Contemporary replica testing of a .44 Derringer with 25 grains of FFG and a 143-grain ball produced roughly 250 feet per second and small wound channels in short-range media. Those numbers explain why placement, not energy, decided the outcome. At contact distance into the skull, even a low-velocity ball is lethal. He remained at large for 11 days until a barn standoff ended with his death. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and share it with others who love diving into firearm history. And if there's a topic you'd like explored next, let us know down in the comments.